All right, it's time to talk about breathing. Well, why do we need to talk about breathing? After all, if you couldn't breathe, you'd be dead. And that's totally true. But breathing to stay alive and breathing to play a brass instrument are two totally, completely different things. And the difference is not the process, it's the size of the breath. Brass players need to inhale to 90% of their total capacity. The technical term is vital capacity, which is completely full to completely empty. Completely empty only happens when you have a punctured lung, and I understand it's extremely painful, so we'll just trust what others have said on that. We're not going to experiment and find out. So you need to breathe to 90%. Athletes, strangely enough, only breathe to 75%. Of course, athletes are breathing very rapidly, especially if they're running hard, whereas brass players take a quick breath and then you might not breathe for 10 to 20 seconds. So we don't breathe near as often, which is why we can take advantage of the 90% of our lung capacity. So the correct breath is as quiet as possible. Any noise is friction. So you tell a little kid to take a big breath and they'll go, and that's friction. And that's slowing the air down, and that's not going to work. And you be quiet. My dog is commenting on my breathing. So breathe as quietly as possible. And all the things people have told you about breathing from the diaphragm and this, that, and the other are all happening, and you don't have to worry about it. It's a simple, simple, simple way, which means you can concentrate on playing 64th notes instead of what your diaphragm is doing, which is going to be difficult because your diaphragm has no nerves. You cannot feel your diaphragm. Also, the diaphragm is a dome-shaped muscle, and all I can do is stretch out and flatten. And the lungs are attached on the top, and so when it stretches, it makes the lungs bigger, and so air rushes into the lungs to fill. At the same time, the ribs are coming up and out like bucket handles, and that also stretches the lungs to make a partial vacuum, and air rushes into the lungs to equalize. So when it's time to blow, the diaphragm is flat, it cannot push back. The diaphragm only can push down, it cannot push up. So the way you quote blow from the diaphragm is by the muscles below the diaphragm. Your lower abdomen muscles pull in, and when they pull in, it's like a piston. It forces the diaphragm up. So you literally cannot blow from the diaphragm, but you can blow from the muscles below the diaphragm. So how do you know that what size breath you need? And Arnold Jacobs, the great brass guru of all time, came up with a very simple test: is you take 3 completely full breaths back to back, and you should get a little dizzy. So, and before actually we do that, we better talk about where the stretch point is. So the stretch point, you breathe in quietly as you can, and you keep breathing in, you keep breathing in, and when I hit the stretch point, my eyes are going to bug out, and I'll start to shake. Here we go. Hope you can see that. It sure wasn't fun. Our normal breath should not be past the stretch point where our eyes bug out and we shake. It should be right next to the stretch point. Sort of like if you're standing on the edge of the Grand Canyon, you haven't jumped in, you're just on the edge. So 3 breaths in a row to the stretch point should produce the beginnings of dizziness. And you should feel a little bit happy. Hi, Mom, how are you? I'm starting to feel a little giddy here. Not very, very dizzy, just a little bit dizzy. Anybody who's alive will get slightly dizzy. If you do 3 breaths in a row and do not get dizzy, you're not breathing to your lung capacity. The variation in lung capacity is enormous. Probably the lowest number you're going to encounter would be 1.5 liters, and the largest will be 7 liters. So the largest lung capacity is close to 5 times bigger than the smallest. How is that fair? It's not fair. And you think about the income disparity, what's fair about that? It's just the way it is. So some people have really big lungs and can take a huge breath, and some people have very small lungs and have to breathe more often. The person with the small lungs breathing more often will play just as well as a person with a larger lung capacity. And you think about how fast tuba players, how fast they use the air, they know how to shape a phrase so that you don't really notice the breath. And so people with smaller lung capacities on trumpet or horn, whatever, can do the same thing. All right, I think that's going to do it.